Throughout history, really, and even going back into prehistory, human beings often make a discovery or an invention that seems to offer wonderful things, but the very things that make them thrive and grow and prosper are the same things that bring them down in the end. That's a classic progress trap. I think that's very apparent in modern times. I mean, we have bought into industrial civilization on a big scale. We actually believe that things will always get bigger and better and everybody will get richer. And that's not only a progress trap, but it's also what is sometimes called an ideological pathology, an idea that is deadly.
In Kyoto, Canada promised to cut greenhouse gas emissions by 6%. Now, 20 years later, the tar sands are booming and emissions are up 26%. If the tar sands were a country, their emissions would equal Switzerland's.
If you set out to devise a method to warm the planet, you couldn't come up with a better one than what Canada is doing in the tar sands. You got to bring in energy to heat this stuff up enough to get it out. Once you've spent all that energy getting it out, then you refine it into gasoline and burn it again. If any significant portion of that tar sands continues to get exploited and burnt, then we'll simply have too much carbon in the atmosphere.
For every barrel of oil that you get from the tar sands, you release 3 times as much carbon as you do from a conventional oil well in Texas or Saudi Arabia. So there's a big carbon liability there. If the whole world followed Canada down that route, which we could, we've all got, oil shales or other, carbon-dense forms of hydrocarbons, we would cook the earth.
Canada has, in the run-up to Copenhagen, done a great deal to sabotage the efforts of the other nations. I mean, it did more damage than any other nation on Earth. And it seems so strange to think, what is the biggest threat to a good global deal at the moment? It's not Saudi Arabia, it's not the US, it's not even China. Canada, how could it be Canada?
It is important that we have a good environmental record and good environmental image. I think often the case is that the oil sands has gotten more criticism than it deserves.
It's very clear to me that the current administration believes that the tar sands are the economic engine for Canada's future prosperity. So we have lost credibility internationally. There's no question that Canada is viewed as a laggard and an obstructionist on the international scene.
Copenhagen is a very good example of why you can't treat climate change like all the other political issues that we face. Normally we move slowly as we address political issues, and that makes sense. In this case, that doesn't work so well, because your opponent is not the Republicans, it's not the Chinese, it's not... Your opponent is physics. And physics isn't going to slowly change its mind. And it's making its presence felt. The Arctic is melting. Glaciers are melting. Drought and flood are spreading relentlessly. The world is shifting in the most profound ways we've ever seen it as a human civilization. Political reality is very powerful, but it's trumped by scientific reality.